So this is how to create painted eyes in Photoshop part 3. And in this video, we're going to discuss the moon. Not that moon, but the moon in the eye. And I will show you how to create it. And I'll also show you what I mean about the moon in the eye if you keep watching. So let's go. Hi everyone. I'm sorry if you hear a slight hum in the background. Your girl is in New York City and it's still a little warm here. So in this video, we're going to discuss the moon. And why do I call it the moon? Like I said in the intro, I'm not talking about that moon. I'm talking about the moon that we create in the other part of the eye. And we create this moon opposite the catchlight because it gives an illumination to the eye that's very appealing, makes the eye very attractive, makes the eye very luminous. And so when light comes into the eye, it bounces around, refracts out, and you get this beautiful glow. And we're going to create that with some paint and some layers right now. So let's start. Sorry if my voice is, I don't know when I became Brenda Vaccaro from, Brenda Vaccaro from the Superman movies? I don't know when my voice got this deep, but I apologize. My apologies. So we're going to start. Make sure that you're on Moon 1. And this video might be a little longer than the catchlight video because while we have 2 layers with the catchlight, we only have one color. We only have the color white to deal with. When we do this moon process, we're going to be working with 2 different colors. And I'm going to show you that now. So we're going to get out our color picker, but I should have, if I open my window that says swatches, where are you, swatches? You will see here that I have a bunch of colors saved for when I do eye. It says eyes, right? And this is my palette I created because if the person has dark eyes, I tend to use more browns and golds. And the person has blue eyes, I tend to use more blue. And sometimes if the eyes are hazel, I'll use gray. But you might ask, how did I determine that these colors will be good? And I'm going to show you that right now. So we're going to take the color pick because you're not going to have swatches in your palette. You're not going to have I don't expect you to have swatches in your palette unless you're a mind reader and you know what colors I'm going to pick, right? So let's color pick in the eye. You color pick various places in the eye and you get kind of a range. You kind of get to see what the color is represented in the iris. So we'll click on this one as well. And you could click around a few places. You notice also that as I click, this scale is jumping up and down right here because sometimes it'll have a little bit more yellow in it. Sometimes it'll have a little bit more red in it. And that's something you have to decide. That's an artistic choice. I tend to not like my paint very saturated for this process. I just like a little soft illumination. So that's what I hope to create. And as I keep color picking them, I'm going to stay here. So now what I do is I go up here and I grab a color somewhere around here. And then, here, that's very helpful. And I take my wheel and I put it up here and I click here and then okay. I don't know what to tell you to do. Move your circle from the original spot to somewhere in the middle. And then you could slide the slider. You can make it more yellow or more red, depending. You see, make it really yellow, but let's make it a little bit more gold. Make it a little bit more gold, this color. Also, we're going to make it maybe we'll make it a little deeper, like that. And if you wanted to save that color, then you would just hit click. And actually, I'm going to hit the plus key, and I'm going to move this swatches box. But no, I don't want to take the whole thing. Okay, that's better. That's better. That's so much better. Okay, except this. We don't want that to do that. Let's go down to where my eyes are. There's my eyes palette. And I'm going to hit plus. And it's going to say swatch 9. And you could call it whatever you want. You want to call it Moon 1, Moon Color 1, Brown, Moon 1. This is the color for Moon 1. But, I don't ask for you. Why are you here? Oh, we get rid of this easy. I'm not it. Oh, I know what I did. I put things on my tablet. Is my touch mode on? touch. Oh, my touch mode was on. Okay. If you've watched any of my videos, you know that I have a drinking game. When I mess up like this and you're forced to watch it, take a shot. And hopefully I don't mess up so much that you get plastered. Anyway, I put things down on my tablet and all kinds of boxes started opening. I apologize. So let's put that away. I'm not taking any of these mistakes out either. You're going to have to live with them. Sorry. That's how I teach. Because I feel there should be problem solving in the world. We should just learn how to fix things instead of starting over. That's just me. Okay, so now that I told you how and why I picked the colors, let's show you how I use them. So we're going to get the brush tool, and this time we're going to use just a soft round opacity. Okay, make sure your hardness is on 0. And the opacity is about 75%, and so is the flow. And make sure you're on the layer that says Moon 1. That's pretty important. I never start on the right layer. If you paint on Catch Light 1, remember Catch Light 1 is part of the Catch Light. Catch Light 2 is that little dot of light in the center. And Moon 1 is now, I told you to pick 2 different tones of gold. So you pick the darker tone first, and you're just going to brush right here in the eye, opposite the Catch Light. And it can be pretty opaque right now. We're going to clean it up with the eraser tool. So we put the paint down like that, and now we're going to get the eraser tool, and we're going to go soft round, pressure, opacity on the eraser. Soft round, pressure, opacity. Well, we're going to use multiple ones. First we use soft round, and this time we're going to turn it down a little bit more. We're going to turn it down to 50%. Turn this down to 50%. And then first in the center, you're going to softly erase into the color. And you see how the edge is getting softer as I do that? So I'm kind of bumping into the paint from the center. Same thing on this side. I start bumping, so I keep my eraser all in the center of the pupil, and I bump into that gold paint. And you can see how you get a very undefined edge then. This one I bumped a little bit more than the other one. This one you can also bump from the edges, and that's gonna also give you a softer edge to this moon, this little glow that we're putting into the eye. Sorry, it is close to puppy dinner time. I did come back to this video after an extended puppy break. I do understand that. Okay, Rosie, mommy's coming. Let's take a break and we'll come right back to erasing in 2 seconds. Now what I should have done is I should have only erased one eye so you can see the difference in the erasing. I could do that again. I could easily just put paint down again. If I go to the paint tool, put the paint down the way I showed you. You could see how you can make the paint more subtle by using the eraser. You can also, if you do erase too much, you could add some more if you want to make it a little darker. Now you might ask, why didn't I just do that from the start? Why didn't I just lightly add paint onto this layer? Because honestly, it's easier to control paint for this method with the eraser than to try to control the paintbrush itself, or at least so far as I found. I've always done it where I fine-tune my brush stroke, my paint stroke here in the eye with the eraser. So what I think we should do is we should take a break and we should discuss the eraser tool for a few minutes. Now in previous videos, I've discussed with you how the brush tool works here in Photoshop. I've also discussed how the brushes work in Corel Painter. What I didn't discuss is how the eraser tool works. Not that there's a lot to it. It's just typical like an eraser on a pencil. And it's in this drop down with the eraser tool, the background eraser tool, a magic eraser. We're just going to use the regular eraser tool for this. So let me first put some paint on this piece of paper. Okay, let's see. Let's up the opacity on this. Let's up the flow. I want it really, really opaque to show you about the eraser. Okay, let's go to black. Because I'm going to do something to the eye now, and I think it's easier to show you how it works on a plain piece of paper first. So you have the eraser tool is very similar to the other brushes. There's not as many choices in the eraser as there is in the paintbrush. But again, we're just going to be working with brushes, soft round, where the pressure affects the size. We have the soft round where the pressure affects the opacity. We have the hard round, but affects the pressure opacity as well. Pressure affects opacity. Here, soft round affects opacity and flow. That might be also a good eraser to use for this project. So now that I have the eraser tool set, I'm going to keep the opacity in 50 and the flow in 50. And you're going to see as I bump into the paint, I can affect the translucency of this paint layer already. And then we're going to play with the opacity and the fill and change the density of the layer that much more. But here's another trick that you can do with this eraser. You don't necessarily have to change erasers. Pretty small. Oh, I'm in the brush tool. Oh, I'm in the brush tool. I'm in the wrong tool. Take a drink. I hope you have your drink available, and I hope it's just Kool-Aid. Well, not Kool-Aid. You know what they say about Kool-Aid. No, don't drink Kool-Aid. Drink tea, iced tea. Okay, and here we have a hard round, and you can see if I turn the opacity to 100%, it's going to make one hard white line right through this black paint. Now, oh, and that was the soft round. You see how I got a harder edge from the same brush? Just by the size that I'm using, and depends on the amount of pixels in the paint. The same brush can go from doing this, when you make it pinpoint, to doing this. And we're going to do that now. We're going to make it pinpoint because we're going to go around. So I made it a pinpoint, and I'm on Moon 1 because I want to go around and erase this line. That's why I wanted to discuss the eraser tool with you, to show you. You don't have to necessarily change the tool. And if you're worried about going around and getting your line straight like I did right there, you see I messed that up because I'm a little shaky. You don't necessarily have to put it on 100% opacity, though it does make life easier. I would suggest putting it on 100% opacity, and this I would suggest doing just to make sure that you don't have any paint in the pupil. Your eraser about the size, just a little bit smaller than the pupil, just a little bit smaller. And with the eraser tool, it's only going to erase where this little plus size is. Plus size. No, it's not a plus size brush. There's a plus sign in the middle. That little, actually it erases at that point. Now you see, that's why when you make the brush bigger, you get a softer line. If you make the brush softer, oh, I'm in the wrong layer. Oh my God, I really hope you are drinking tea at this point. Go back to Moon 1. Okay, so I had it about the size of the pupil, and I'm going to make sure I'm in the eraser. I'm going to start. You'll notice when the tool is in the big stage, you don't get as hard of a line as you do here on the bottom. Now here, I started erasing right away, and I wasn't concerned about the pupil. You see here how I can clean up that pupil very well now if I make the brush small, and I'm going over the line here. Now, here it is in 100% opacity. I made sure there was no paint in the pupil on that side. I'm going to turn it back down to 50%. I'm going to turn it to 50%. You're going to see my first pass now that it's at 50% isn't going to take all the paint off, but it'll be more forgiving if I make my hand's a little bit numb today, so I can't get my lines completely straight. I probably have to zoom in. But this is the gist. This is what we want to get to. Okay, so we have that nice dark line that goes around the eye. Make the tool big again, and we're going to soften this edge. We just want to make sure we have no paint in the pupil, and now we're going to actually soften that edge and soften the sides, and we're going to go around the bottom again just to soften that edge, get a little closer to the paint. But you want the paint heavier on the bottom, and you want it to almost like a gradient that goes from light. You want a gradient that goes from darker to lighter as it gets closer to the pupil. And here I am softening the edge with the eraser some more. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a little bit more work on this erasing because it could get tedious and boring for you to watch me, and I'm going to get Moon 1 to the point where we should be, and then we'll talk about Moon 2. Now I don't know about you, but I find it very hard to paint in a gradient. So that's why it's a combination of the eraser tool and the paint tool to get to this point. So now you see all this erasing and brushing, adding a little paint back, taking a little paint away until we get a nice gradient of color like that in the eye. So a nice gradient of color like that. And then that's not the end of that. So Moon 1, next we're going to take the opacity. We're going to take that down just like we did with the catch light. We're going to take it down 65% and we're going to take the fill down as well. And watch your eyes as you take the fill down. You don't want that color to totally disappear, but you notice how now that I'm adjusting the fill, how that translucent gradient makes a difference. And you can always slide this back and forth to say how intense you want the effect. I'm going to leave it here at 75%. So that's Moon 1. Depending on the eye, depending on the iris, how thick you're going to make the paint. A lot of this is a judgment call. The same thing with the catch light, like I mentioned in the last video. A lot of this is a judgment call. So I'm judging to leave it here, and we're going to go on to Moon 2. So I'm going to pick the layer that says Moon 2. I'm going to leave this here with the opacity at 100% and the fill at 100% for the new layer, and the Moon 1 is going to say at 65. Well, I might increase, once you lower the fill, you might want to raise the opacity again. This is all a balancing act. Some of it is subjective and it takes a lot of practice too. So what you want is you want to see the paint in the eye, but you don't want it noticeable. Does that make sense? You want to see the effect in the eye. You just don't want people to know that you blob some paint on there. And you don't want to lower it too much that it doesn't have an effect. So I think I'm going to stick there, 70 and 70. And I'm going to zoom back in and I'm going to zoom into this one eye. I'm going to go to Moon 2 and back to my swatch it. No, what is this? It's searching for it's searching for brackets. Ding dong. Okay, so I believe I used this color up here the first time, so I'm going to take something a little lighter. Well, the only way to tell is until I put the paint down. Well, that looks kind of pink. I'm going to open that up in the color pickup. I don't know if I maybe want a little bit more gold. Just a little bit. Even though the first one was a little pink, I might make this one a little bit more yellow. I'm going to save it too, just in case. Hit the plus sign, call it light gold, just in case, because I might put it down and it'll look completely terrible. So we're just going to stick it there. And I think it is going to look completely terrible. Take your brush tool, find a color a little bit light. All right, we'll go back to this one. This one does not look like it's going to be right, does it? All right, we'll put it just to see. We'll put it to see that I'm wrong. And this is what I told you about picking these colors is subjective. Let me zoom out when I put it down. Okay, so what you do is you make the brush the size of the iris, but this time you're going to paint inside the other moon. You're just going to paint in the center of it. Yeah, it's not right. You can see it's just, it's off. All right, let's get rid of that. Go to the history palette, jump back before I started brushing. Get on Moon 2 too. Make sure you're on Moon 2. I'm going to click on this color again. I don't know why I'm so let me click on this color. Let's go to the color window. So now we got this extended color window. What you basically want to do for Moon 2 is pick a color that's a little lighter and brighter than Moon 1. I'm going to go there. Going to go to swatches, going to save it. Light, gold. And you're going to put the paint in the center of Moon 1. Now I have the brush right now on 20. Oh, that's why. Brush tool's on 25%. We don't want that. So let me tell you why the brush tool is on 25% opacity and 25% flow. Because I'm going to get a white piece of paper. Before I correct my mistake, and I know I make many, I'm going to tell you why this brush was at opacity 25 and flow 25, even though the brush itself was a pressure, opacity, and flow. That means how hard I press on the tablet is going to affect how much paint comes out of the brush or how much paint I can apply on the paper. So while I've discussed this in other videos, for here, when you have the brush on 25%, you can see how very little color I can put down at 25% as opposed to 100%. The brush brush does depend on my hand pressure, and I got to press all the way down to get 100% opacity on this brush. But it's a lot harder to get this very fine, faint line of paint when you have the brush at 100%. Sometimes when you really just want to add a touch of paint, and again, we have the brush set at opacity and flow for that reason, because we don't know as we're painting if we want to add a lot of paint or if we want to add a little paint. We want to add a little less paint, a little less paint. Sometimes you want to make sure you're adding very little paint. You want to trick yourself. So if you set the opacity down to 25% on both of them, it's almost impossible to get an opaque color. No matter how hard you press, it's impossible. You see that? It's impossible to get opaque color. So sometimes I set the brush to 25% as a stopgap, meaning I want to set my brush so even if I randomly press hard, I'm not depositing a lot of paint. And that was the help to get the gradient too. And then when you go back with the eraser, sometimes this is easier to erase. Erasing in a gradient sometimes is easier than painting in a gradient, if you can see that. That's a better representation of what I did in the moon. That's a better representation. You could see it bigger. So I made a gradient and I did it with the eraser. Could I make a gradient with the brush tool? I'm going to try. Let's see. But I know it's going to be a lot harder. First of all, I'll set the brush at 100%. So to do a gradient like that, what I would have to do is start light and then push the brush. And I guess the brushes over the years, gotta remember, I developed this technique a long time ago. I've been doing eyes like this since 2007. So it was many versions of Photoshop ago. And every week they change the brushes. So it might be possible to paint. But then you see, if you get a little careless with your brush at 100%, you'll be going really light and stroking the paint. And someone hit your arm. So you set it. So sometimes setting the opacity and flow, even when you have a brush that says opacity and flow, is a good idea. And that's what I did. So now I'm on Moon 2. I have the brush back to 100% for a reason. I want to see exactly where I'm putting this paint on top of the other paint. Okay, make sure I'm on Moon 2. I'm putting down a nice little deposit. And sometimes I even make it like a little star point like that. And I'm going to kind of erase it in that shape. It's almost like a twinkle inside the moon. So the moon is the light that refracts out of the eye, brightens it up. But consider this like a painted twinkle. Now, sometimes what I do too, go back to your color wheel and get something a little brighter and maybe put that right. Oh, he got some paint on his forehead there. All right, we'll take care of that eraser. Sometimes I put a little dot of lighter paint right in the center of Moon 2. I really want to counterbalance to the catch light. So now we get the eraser tool. And first thing to do is erase that bindi dot I just gave him on his head. No, we don't want that. And then we start doing the same thing again, where we're going to erase down in a gradient. And again, I'm starting off big. Sometimes I start off with a big eraser and I'm going to turn it up to 100% because again, I have the brush on pressure opacity this time. Let's put it on pressure opacity and flow. That might make it a little easier to do this erasing method because you can pick your hand up and that's going to affect how much you're actually erasing from Moon 2. So you see how I'm starting to work it as I'm bumping around it, and then when I make the brush small to really clean up the pupil, make sure that pupil stays black. So it's just like this little spot inside Moon 1, call it Moon 2, even though this one, that was a little too much erasing. I really went for it there. So again, if I didn't want to erase that much, it might be a good idea to put myself down to 50%. So 50% opacity and flow. And now I know there's no way, even if I press 100%, there's no way I'm going to erase my whole thing. I'm only going to erase 50% of it. Even if I get a little heavy-handed, I can't over erase. There we go. So it should look like that in the end. Just a little highlight on the edge of Moon 1. And let me erase this one down. Let's see if I could do it on camera quickly. Or do I have to be like the man behind the curtain and go erase my Moon 2 in private away from you guys? In shame. Now, sometimes I notice, and I think this is an optical illusion, I don't think this moon is any lighter than this moon. I think because this moon happens to fall on the shadow side of the face, it just appears lighter. It's one of those optical illusions, like when you draw a pencil line between two gray boxes. The two gray boxes tend to look like they're different colors when they're the same. So sometimes it's not a bad idea to cheat that optical illusion a little bit. And I've done that in the past, especially when this eye is very much in shadow and when this eye is on a highlighted side of the face. He does have the typical Rembrandt lighting on him, but he has his face so far turned, he's almost split light too. While he does have a little bit of lightness right here, he's kind of split light as well. So what I do then is I lighten the color on the brush tool, and looking at the other eye to judge, I might just tap a little brightness into the side. Now they look a little bit more equal. And I could probably erase down a little bit more. I'm going to erase down a little bit more on this side. But again, I have my eraser tool. I can't go completely through it. Even if I go over it, I can't completely erase it. You go over it. Okay, so that's Moon 2. And you're going to do the same thing again. You're going to lower the opacity. You're going to lower the fill. Let's do the fill first this time. So we're going to do the fill. I'm going to go down to 70% again. And on the opacity, we're going to go to 70%. Now, you may ask, why did you do it that way? Why do you have to do Moon 1 and Moon 2? Well, there's a subtle change between the two. You can't do one without the other. Here's Moon 2. You can see Moon 2 is just a little tiny little highlight that goes inside Moon 1. Moon 1 really lifts all the color of the eye. Moon 2 just adds that little highlight to give it more of a shape so it's not so amaryllis. Is that the right way to say the word? Sometimes this Brooklyn tongue can't wrap itself around vocabulary. Anyway, you don't want it to look like one solid mass of gold. So adding 2 layers of paint and then playing with the opacity between the 2 layers. You can see without Moon 2, it looks like that. With Moon 2, just adds a little bit of brightness to the eye. If we zoom all the way out, you can see there is a subtle, tiny difference. Moon 2, just a little glow inside. If we shut off Moon 1, we can see that little glow I painted inside. Actually, was thinking that it was an optical illusion, but now that I'm looking at it, I actually think I left this one a little lighter than this one. But we're going to do one more step after this, and you see that's this layer here called Details. And you'll notice something different about the layer called Details. Moon 1 is set in normal. Details is set in color. And this is a step that I'm playing with. We might have 2 detail layers in the next video. But if you want to see the final steps, which are not far away, you can see how far we've come. Let's shut off all the layers. Well, this was his eyes originally, but the way it was shot, this is how we retouched it. Let's zoom in close so you can see. So you can see now, this is the change that we made in his eyes. First was this was his eyes, how it was shot. The regular softbox catch light. We retouched it to this, where we enhanced the pupil and went around the iris and added some shadow under the lid, or enhanced the shadow on the lid. Then we did Catch Light 1, which was that little dot. We replaced the soft box in his eye and we put Catch Light 1. We added Catch Light 2. That adds a little dimension so it doesn't just look like a blob of white. Same thing with the moon. We do Moon 1, which is a nice stroke of color across the eye where the light refracts out. And then Moon 2 adds just a subtle highlight to the edge. And the next video will be Details. So I hope you come back. Please subscribe and like the video. It helps the channel so much. We also have live painting videos too. So not only digital paintings, but if you're interested in watching painting with actual acrylics, check out some of our other videos. And we will see you soon. Take care. Bye.